Picture this. I'm standing in the middle of the Malaysian jungle. This big burly man has his hands around my neck, about to squeeze my carotid arteries until I die. Now, fortunately, I'm at a retreat and this is a simulated death experience. So I'm not scared. Actually, I'm curious. Is this the moment where I finally see the light? As I pass out, however, my life doesn't flash before me. There is no choir of angels, but there is a voice. Janet, you have let everyone down. As I come to, I am overwhelmed by this wave of disappointment that quickly turns to outrage. That's it? That wet sock of a line is my reward for a lifetime of self-sacrifice? And then it hits me. Of course I've let everyone down, and no one more so than myself. I've done everything right, I've worked really hard, made lots of money, have a great marriage and 3 beautiful children, and yet somehow I've wasted my life. What is the number one regret that we humans have just before we die? I wish I'd had the courage to live the life that was true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. That wave of disappointment was the wake-up call that I needed to set me on my path. In that moment, I made the resolution that rather than live a life of regret, that I would live a life that filled me with a sense of fulfillment and gratitude. I became obsessed by one thought, that when I do finally depart, it is not with regret, it is with a sense of gratitude and fulfillment. The question then became, how? How do we find this sense of fulfillment? Did you have a favourite subject at school? When I tell you mine, you are going to think I am some kind of super dag, which is Australian for really uncool. My favourite subject was Latin. And as the proverbial word nerd, I was intrigued by our school motto, Luceat lux vestra, let your light shine. Well, that's fine, I thought, but what is my light and how do I let it shine if I don't even know where to find it? I knew it had something to do with a particular word, a word that for many of us is the most challenging in the English language, a word that, to be honest, annoyed the hell out of me. Yep, that pesky P word, purpose. Why is it, I wondered, that some lucky few get struck by this divine bolt from the blue and know their true calling, while the rest of us are left to flounder around living lives that don't really matter? And what if I don't have what it takes to be Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela? And when I did ask myself the big questions, who am I and what am I supposed to be doing with my life, I kept drawing a blank. I would go on to run 6 businesses in advertising, real estate, hospitality. But you know what? None of them I was really passionate about. And according to Gallup, I wasn't alone. 85% of people are unhappy in their jobs, leaving a measly 15% who are actually engaged in their work. And it made me wonder, what does that 15% know that I don't? So at 47, I went searching for the answers. And 10 years and many thousands of dollars worth of personal development programs later, I was still none the wiser. Until that moment in the Malaysian jungle and the epiphany that would change my life. What if the reason so many of us struggle to find our purpose is simply because we've been looking in the wrong place? To our future, to goals and vision boards of our ideal life, to fantasies, when the place that we really need to go is the place that we least want to look. To the reality of our often painful past and our heaviest unresolved emotions. I realized that we cannot find what we are running towards until we confront and conquer what we are running from. But emotions are so nebulous. How do we pinpoint them so that we can actually work with them? And this, my friends, is where words came to the rescue. Science tells us that when people give words to negative emotions, they regulate their emotional state and calm themselves down. So in this calm state, we are open to the truth about ourselves, to who we really are, and importantly, what it is we really, really want. So this is where my inner nerd word really went to town. I started researching hundreds and hundreds of words that described our darkest state, and I came up with 120 or so that popped up most often in my work. There were the obvious ones, like anger, resentment, fearfulness, and the not so obvious ones, like cynicism, fakeness, gullibility. And then I set myself the goal of finding 100 people that I could take through these pain points until we could whittle them down to their top 3. And I called this our triangle of pain. And it's different for every one of us. So how does this work? Well, let me share with you a couple of real-life examples. One of the first people I worked with, a CEO of a small business, let's call him Robert. His business initially went off like a rocket, but then hit a wall to the point where not only was his financial future under threat, but also his marriage. So we started off by identifying his 3 core pain points. And the first one we came across, the third most challenging, was stress. And the second, frustration. And then the big daddy of them all, the core emotional pain point, loneliness. And what I noticed was that one fed into the other. So for example, if Robert was stressing out about cash flow, then that would escalate in him a sense of frustration with his team, with the economy, and then that would lead him into loneliness. He would retreat back into himself. And what I noticed was that this then created its own emotional pain cycle. Stress and frustration keep me stuck in loneliness. So how could we help Robert break free? Well, rather than avoid our emotional pain points, I regard them as something to feel grateful for, because they are signposts to guide us to the place where every single one of us needs to go. And that is into that Pandora's box of unresolved wounds from our childhood. And you know, sometimes they can be remarkably trivial, like a snappy comment from a frustrated mother. Or in Robert's case, we trace the source of his loneliness all the way back to 3 years of age, when he wanted to play blocks with his older brother. But when his older brother refused, Robert was left to play all by himself, setting in train a behaviour pattern that would play out for the rest of his adult life. So we worked with 3-year-old Robert and asked what he really wanted, and he just wanted to have fun, but constructive fun, building something. So working with the rest of the pain points, we now had what we needed to transform Robert's triangle of pain into his triangle of purpose. So instead of stress, beneath stress, we found a longing for freedom. And beneath frustration, what he truly yearned for was love. And I'm glad to say his marriage is in much better shape now. And then the antidote to loneliness for Robert was to build a life of purposeful fun. So now we had for Robert his pathway to purpose. By creating the freedom to do what I love, I build a life of purposeful fun. Now, why is this so important? Neuroscience confirms that positive self-talk has the power to rewire our neural pathways so that we are motivated to succeed. Where this gets even more interesting is that when we have our own purpose statement, that is positive self-talk on steroids. Why? Because it's coming from within us. It's forged from our pain. When we can transform the heavy energy of pain into the vibrant energy of purpose, we don't just have a bunch of words anymore. We actually have a heartfelt theme for our life. And sure enough, today, Robert is doing what he loves, speaking from stages like this, connecting with his fellow business owners, inspiring them to have financial freedom on their terms, so that they too can build a life of purposeful fun. Next, we have Pete. So, Pete wanted to make a difference, but suffering from dyslexia at school, the shame of that had kept him in the shadows. So we had to unearth the 3 pain points that were stopping him from finding his purpose. And what we found, the third one, was scarcity. So a scarcity mindset was driving him into overwhelm. And that overwhelm, in turn, created his core emotional pain point, which was the need to control. So, how to turn Pete's triangle of pain into his triangle of purpose. We did a deep dive into each of those pain points, and beneath scarcity, we found a deep longing for playful abundance. And then, beneath overwhelm, the suppressed energy of creativity. And then, for Pete to finally let go of the need to control, he had to give himself permission to actively pursue the life he truly wanted, a life of excitement. So now Pete had his pathway to purpose. Through playful abundance and creativity, I create a world of excitement. Who could forget that famous scene with Meg Ryan from the movie When Harry Met Sally? I'll have what she's having. Sorry, I massacred your accent. But all that to say that when we are living our lives on purpose, we inspire others to have what we're having. And so today, Pete is bringing excitement into his life through his ever-expanding community of men who also want to leave a legacy. And in fact, their motto says it all: unite, ignite, and leave a light. Going back to my career in advertising, I'll never forget the day I was halfway through a presentation with probably our most important client, and I felt this weird sensation going up my left arm. And then when I opened my mouth to speak, no words came out. Terrified, I thought I was having a stroke. My doctor set me straight. He said, "Janet, you are living with chronic stress and you are on the brink of burnout." Today, by contrast, I wake up feeling fired up and I go to bed without a worry in the world. And if I did die tomorrow, it wouldn't be with regret, but gratitude, because I have finally found my purpose, which in my heart I know is helping others find theirs. So I believe your purpose is simply this: to become the fully expressed version of your true self. Finding your purpose doesn't take 5 minutes. It's a journey. You have to do the work, but it doesn't have to take the 10 years that it took me. In fact, you could start right here. Number 1, identify your core emotional pain points. Number 2, explore each one to get to the childhood wound. 3, unearth the desire that's been buried beneath that wound. And 4, create your pathway to purpose and live it. Before I leave you today, I'd like to share with you the story of a woman who I started working with, but sadly we didn't get to complete her triangle of pain until she fell too ill to continue. So Mimi was just 7 years old when her much adored father, a very talented artist but hopeless alcoholic, deserted her, abandoned her, leaving her to spend the rest of her life struggling with her emotional pain cycle. Through anxiety and worry, I spend my time catastrophizing. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because Mimi is my mother, and it is she who has perhaps taught me my most valuable lesson: what happens when we don't confront our emotional pain. So rather than blame her dad for deserting her, Mum punished herself by never becoming the artist that she was born to be. Instead, she lived on the fringes of the art world, visiting galleries, decorating her home with other people's works of art. The Mum I knew had a folder this thick called Current Worries. I never had the joy of witnessing her as her true, creative, vibrant self. There is, however, a happy twist to this tale. A few months ago, my mum had her own Malaysian jungle moment. Her heart stopped. She went unconscious, and we thought we had lost her. It does get happier, by the way. When the paramedics revived her, something within her had shifted. And at the age of 92, for the very first time, her hand nearly crippled by arthritis, for the very first time, she picked up a paintbrush. And became the fullest version of her true self. You don't have to wait for your Malaysian jungle moment. You have a choice. And perhaps what my school motto should have said was, explorare tenebras vuestra, explore your darkness, for then you really can luceat lux vuestra, let your light shine. Thank you.